The views expressed, opinions given, and any communication made between the hosts and guests of What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Para X Radio, EMC Network, or all services that play this show. The hosts and services are not responsible for the actions of their guests, and the original rights of all intellectual property is retained by the creator, and all work is used with either permission or Creative Commons license. The show is for entertainment purposes only. We're here on What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show Lockdown. She doesn't know it, but we have surrounded Katrina Weidman's house with What Are You Afraid of fans. And for 78 hours, we're adding a few hours on, 78 hours, we're going longer. Katrina Weidman will try to detect if we have any paranormal talent. On What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. That is our special show tonight.
That's right.
Yes. She doesn't know this yet. It's going to be a great surprise. We can't wait to see the horror.
I can't wait either.
I know. It's going to be awesome. We've never done this before, and we probably will be jailed after this, but it's going to be great.
It's going to be great, yeah.
How are you, Phil?
I'm good. How are you, Fox?
Hot.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
It's June-tober.
June-tober, July-tober, yeah.
It is absolutely too hot.
It's 4th of July in October.
It really is. I mean, it's like there's Christmas in July, and now we've got Halloween in July. And we're recording a little early with her. It's October 9th. Mm-hmm. And we were at Penhurst last Friday night, doing one of the shows we're doing up there. And even at like 11 o'clock at night, I was boiling in that suit jacket. Yep. And you're wearing your David Pumpkins outfit.
I was wearing my David Pumpkins costume.
I know.
And I had to take the jacket off.
It was just too hot.
The hat and the mask, it was just crazy.
And unfortunately, people associate haunted houses with cold temperatures.
Right.
Like everybody was dressed up in coats and things, and they got there and nobody was coming out.
Some people were. I was with hoodies on. I'm like, oh my god, they must be dying.
I know, we certainly were.
Yeah, I was too. I remember last year going to a haunted hayride, and it was like 30 degrees out in the field. It was around this time last year. 30 degrees.
30 degrees, right.
There's a huge difference between this year and last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. Winter might not ever come. Who knows?
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. I do like my cold temperatures, though. I do like, it's beautiful when it snows in Chestnut Hill. Mm-hmm. Oh. And I go up with Allison because, she works the law firm there. And I'll go up and write all day at the Starbucks there and make my deadlines. And it's just, I will miss that if I can't look out upon Germantown Avenue and see the beautiful snow coming down on those wonderful Tudor-faced buildings.
I think I would miss that too. I mean, I do like some snow to an extent. Mm-hmm. Nothing like 3 feet or anything like that. We have to shovel, for hours on end. But flurries are nice.
It is kind of nice when it snows in to snuggle with the wife and have hot cocoa.
There you go.
With Kahlua.
Hot toddies, right?
Hot toddies, right. That's, So, we have a very special show.
Yes, we do.
I know. I've been tracking her down. She's been tracking me down. It's been a bit of a hunt between us, back and forth. The emails back and forth. Well, you're free this day. Well, I'm in Gettysburg this day. Well, I have a film schedule. Right. I'm on Destination America. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll have to wait then. But tonight, on the show, episode 63, we're calling it The Haunting of Katrina Weidman. It's part of our Countdown to Halloween on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal show on ParaX Radio on Friday nights on EMC Network and at all major podcast services. If it's a service, we're on it.
That's right.
That's us. That's who we are. Good evening, Katrina Weidman.
Hello, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I think you're the biggest celebrity we've had on the show.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I'm really happy we could work out because I know we've been playing some schedule tag. But I guess, you know.
It's always like that.
Right.
I mean, it'll take me several months to track down somebody who wants to come on the show, and I start early. You know, and you put out feelers, and then you hope to hear back, and then when you do, you know, it takes several months, and you stay patient, you stay considerate of their needs, and you understand they're doing you a favor because we're a free show. We don't get paid, we don't make any money, we don't pay them, and they're coming out as a service to us and our fans.
That's right, that's correct.
So we really appreciate the time you've made, especially during June-tober.
June-tober, yeah.
But you are Katrina Weidman, and you're a Philly resident, which is wonderful.
Yep.
Yes.
To have
local to the area. Yep. Born and raised.
Born and raised, fantastic. We love Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's we're Philadelphia's home part, at least we're trying to be. And you are a paranormal investigator. You're on Destination America on a show called Paranormal Lockdown. And what's the premise of this show?
Yep. So Paranormal Lockdown follows me and Nick Roth, and we are confined to haunted locations for 72 hours. So we basically live in some of the world's most haunted and iconic locations for 72 hours. And it gets pretty crazy. I would say, I've been in the paranormal field for 11 years. And the craziest experiences, and I think the ones that have really kind of shook my spiritual and logical foundation all at the same time have been while working with Nick on Lockdown.
Wow.
You've had some intense experiences on the show, which we're going to talk about.
Right.
Today. I was cooking dinner for Phil and the family tonight, and I was listening to it on my iPad, episodes I've not seen before, and I've got pumpkin pudding in, and I'm not paying attention to it because I'm watching you reach out to this little boy under a table that you can only see on this camera. And he's holding like the middle of your hand, and your hand's going numb. And I've never seen evidence like that before.
Yeah, we've gotten some pretty wild evidence, and that one, the one you're talking about, that's a location actually located in Jersey. It's not too far from Philly. You can actually go there. They're trying to restore it, and thankfully there was someone who stepped up. It was going to be demolished and turned into, who knows what, but thankfully somebody stepped up, and now historians and the preservation offices can be there to restore it. So they do welcome people to come and check it out. And I know they welcome ghost hunters too. And it's really an amazing location. It's historically very significant to the Revolutionary War and even the Civil War, but more so on the Revolutionary War side. And, so Nick and I got to live there for a couple days, and, we didn't have anything, really scary. It wasn't anything evil or negative, but we did have, a lot of experiences there. And the camera you're talking about we use a 3D mapping camera. So basically how it works is, it'll detect anything with mass. So humans, for example, it'll map them out into stick figures. And so, what's interesting is that every now and again, Nick and I will get a stick figure mapped out when there's no one there. And I think, all technology, right, they can have glitches, they can mess up, et cetera, et cetera. But what's really interesting about this is that this has been, we've had this on a bunch of locations where we've been to where we can't figure out a logical explanation for why the stick figure would show up. And what's really cool is, there's times where both Nick and I are mapped out, and then there's a third figure that shows up. So it's not like it's trying to map out one of us, and it can't, and it's just misaligned or something. It's mapping out something extra there. And at that particular location in New Jersey, what's really fascinating about this, and unfortunately, and this kind of always seems to be the way of how some investigations go, we weren't recording when this specific part happened. But Nick and I were downstairs, and the equipment was being set up upstairs because we also have our cameraman Rob, who's with us. He's not an investigator, although as far as he's not in the paranormal field, he comes from the world of television and film, but, he's been with us long enough where he understands the paranormal now. So when the equipment was being set up, the stick figure was actually seen walking into the room.
Right.
But that was before we could hit record. So when we hit record, it was already in the room. But it was what I find really fascinating. It was seen walking into the room, like it was its own, intelligent, free form.
Something else there. Yeah, that's the only explanation I can think of.
As far as ghost hunting goes, or paranormal research, obviously the technology isn't perfect yet, because we're still trying to figure out what these energies are made up of so we can detect them properly. But I think from even the time I've started in the field, it's grown leaps and bounds.
Right, definitely.
Yeah. And one of the episodes I was watching earlier was, you were just talking about him, your cameraman, Rob, was bitten.
Yes.
I think it was the right side of his back.
Yep.
And there was teeth marks.
Oh, sounds demonic.
Yeah, it looked horrifying.
Sounds inhuman to me. That's usually.
Yeah. He was.
He left, right? Funny. He left. He couldn't stick around the rest of that night.
He did. Yeah, he left. And Rob Rob does leave. Nick and I are the ones confined to the property, so right. Rob gets to. We always make jokes that we're envious of him when he comes back in the morning because he looks refreshed and he's showered and he's just like, okay, guys, I'm ready for a great day. And we're just like covered in dirt and dust and we haven't slept and, but yeah, he did leave that night. And that was a wild place too. That was called the Anderson Hotel, and that's located in Kentucky. And actually a friend of ours he's the guy who, like, if you go there and you do like a walkthrough or you do a ghost hunt, his name is Jeff, and he runs it there. So you would meet Jeff. And when we were there, there's an overwhelming feeling of just negativity there. And especially the room where Rob was bitten, we all felt it. And I can't remember if it made the episode or not, but we had a brief conversation where we're just like, it almost felt like pins and needles all over your body. It was just like this really uncomfortable feeling. And then a few minutes after we had that conversation, Rob, you'll see him in the episode. He has, first off, he has a very expensive camera on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's huge.
It's a very expensive camera. And you kind of see him, like, he doesn't throw it, but he's not, you got to understand, Rob's a camera guy. So that's like his baby. Mm. He's very delicate with it. He protects it. But you'll see him, he kind of just, like, throws it off of him. And he's just like, my back. And at first he thought it was just like a bug or something, like a spider or something like that got up his shirt and bit him. But when we lifted up his shirt, there were actually 2 bite marks on him.
Yeah, there's 2.
And a few scratch marks. I kind of joke with Rob sometimes because I'm like, you're kind of like the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean? Like, because you're like the most, there's a scene in The Wizard of Oz where the line's like, oh, you don't believe in spooks? Because he's really scared.
Right. I do believe in spooks.
I do.
And the Tin Man's just trying to, like, logically explain what they could be. And he's like, I don't think there's any. And then he gets, like, thrown across the room, So, like, I'm like, oh, Rob, I'm like, you're the Tin Man.
Well, we heard it tonight. Rob is the Tin Man.
Rob's the Tin Man, that's right.
I just wanted to bring up an interesting point that I'm learning in this field, and that's the field of historic interpretation and preservation is becoming linked with paranormal investigation.
Yes.
Because a lot of material you get to explain a haunting is usually in historic records. There's always that scene where somebody goes down to the city hall and, this woman was killed here, this one was burned here on the property, this dog was hung upside down and took it on his belly. Obviously, he's back and haunting the place. Right. At Pennhurst, of course, they've had some issues with Pennhurst Preservation Society and, various other groups, but what they're doing is they're making sure the site does not get torn down. By making it a place of revenue. And I worked before I got too sick, I was working at places like Pennsbury Manor, Washington's Crossing. Back then we had something called the PHMC, the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission. And they would fund half, and then some society would fund the other half, and now that's all gone. And now they're talking about killing the very little funding these important museums have. And a lot of them are creating paranormal investigation parallels to raise revenue to support their historic preservation activities. Oh. Like she was talking about the place in New Jersey.
Right, correct.
Yeah, and it's so important, and I think that's something, like, even if someone doesn't believe in the paranormal, you think it's all bogus or whatever, I have seen in the field how much these investigations have helped places like Pennhurst, Eastern State Penitentiary, even though, Eastern State Penitentiary is pretty well funded because they're a museum and they do the tours and everything. But they do the haunted house every year, which is great, and they do ghost hunts, and it's this, and it's all. I think what you find a lot in the paranormal is skeptics and believers, and everyone in the middle, on all sides. Everyone just loves history. And it's so important, I think, to preserve as much of our history as we can. And we live, especially here in the Northeast, but we live in that area where there's so much significance here as far as our history. And it's a shame that some of it just gets lost just due to development and I guess money, really.
It's really money, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a shame. And there's actually, I still get very upset about this one. There was a beautiful hotel down in Florida that was basically like the East Coast version of the Del out in San Diego. And beautiful Victorian hotel. And they were trying to preserve it. And I had been talking to the people on the board of the ones who were trying to save it. And they had investors line up. They had people saying that we can save it. The building's not so far gone where we can't. And unfortunately, this developer with a lot of money came in, and they basically, at the time, I guess they kept trying to have meetings to save it. And I guess from what I heard, money kind of won out, over history. Yeah. And it's just such a shame. I hate seeing that stuff happen.
A lot of times that happens. It's a shame. And I applaud the people that keep these things going. Yeah. These places like Mark Nesbitt in Gettysburg.
He's really been fighting for the preservation. Right. And of course, Fort Mifflin. Right. Rebecca Brumble's become a very important part of creating the ghost environment, which we brought them in a lot of money when we set up that spooky day. Yeah, we brought in the authors and had the event ourselves. We helped support
they were happy with us, yeah.
They were, yeah. And that'll be a video soon. I'm working on that. That's it's a wonderful horror reading. That I'm a member of the Horror Writers Association, and I brought in some other HWA authors, and we had a beautiful reading in Casement 5.
It was creepy and very.
And they've never done anything.
No,
nothing like that before in the
HWA.
Smoky
bars and things like that.
It was like, I know. We were like, there was ghosts in the audience with us.
Yeah.
Watching.
And then we got flooded out.
Yeah. I know.
Like literally flooded out.
Flooded out. It was.
My gosh.
We had just
finished. There was sideway rain
as the tidal wave was coming down. It was like the rats were fleeing. It was that bad. It was that bad.
Were they in little boats?
Little boats and.
What's that line in Titanic? Whichever way the rats are going, that's good enough for me.
That's right. When the ship is sinking and you see them all going, or like the
story. Way the rats are going, it's good enough for me. Yeah, and that's
your source for everything paranormal. Para X.
worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, they crawl all over your dirty snout, your chest. My name is David Walton. I am a vocal performer for What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal show. And I have carried the burden of a terrible secret. I am actually what is offensively called a ghost. For years now I have concealed my ectoplasmic existence from my friends and family, in fear of a common prejudice against ghosts, or what we like to call the disembodied. I have existed frightened of being discovered, unable to do physical acts that the embodied take for granted, such as walking a squirrel, or drinking a glass of vitamin E milk fresh squeezed from a whale. I grew depressed and even considered acts of self-harm or reincarnation, which is suicide for the disembodied. Such movies as Ghostbusters and its sequels drove my feelings of disenfranchisement, and I began looking for help, only to encounter painful exorcisms in the houses I haunted. Then I met two good people, it says here, Fox and Phil, at What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal. And they helped me take control of my own life. Now, it is my choice whether I wish to make phantom bounds in the night, appear at the foot of your bed in darkness, or make your walls bleed. If you are a disembodied person like I am, and you're living a lie, What Are You Afraid Of? Can help you too. They are on at 9 p.m. on Friday nights at Para-X Radio, leaving plenty of time for midnight haunting activities, and can be found on all major podcast services. Listen to their paranormal stories, interviews, humorous sketches and horror fiction to know that you are not alone. And if you are a member of the embodied, don't forget, you are only a single heart attack or tumour away from becoming one of us. This is David Walton. See you on the other side. Or as I call it, this side. And that is the end of a perfect day.
Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
My name is Greg Bakken. I'm a writer, a producer, and a paranormal investigator. My favorite way of communicating with spirits is through using the spirit box, also known as a ghost box. I invite you to listen to me every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central for interviews with people in the paranormal community and beyond. Plus, I will also include as much of my spirit box evidence as I can during my show. My name is Greg. Can you say Greg? Can you say Jeff? Greg. Jeff. Join me every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central Time for Minnesota Ghost Box, only on Para-X Radio.
Katrina, your paranormal journey began with dropping a friend off at Penn State. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it kind of happened a little before that. I grew up in Bucks County and grew up in haunted houses. I mean, my earliest memory of having a paranormal experience, I was 3 or 4, somewhere in that age, kind of where your memory starts, I guess. So I always grew up just having these experiences, and my mom's side of the family had these experiences too. So I was never taught that don't believe in that stuff. It's all hogwash. It was just sort of like, this is kind of accepted. And it wasn't even like really encouraged, but it was just sort of like, yeah, it happens. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I was never shied away from exploring that side of things in this world. And so when I started reading and, they would have the book orders at school, Yeah,
right.
I would always get the ghost stories and all the alien stories and all that stuff. So I'd always read those, so of course, as I grew up and like I learned, you would hear things like if you take a picture and you get like dust and it's a ghost, like, right. So I like try to do that stuff. And then, but how I started professionally in the field, because I didn't even realize that was a thing you could do. But I dropped off a friend at Penn State, And at the time, I had no ambition to go to college. I didn't do that well in school. You know, I was always kind of bored in school, so I never really excelled that well as far as academically. And I dropped off a friend at Penn State, and the minute my feet hit the ground that day, I don't know what it was, but it was this overwhelming feeling of this, you need to be here. Mm-hmm. And it was so strong that Monday, I dropped him off on a weekend. That Monday, I went to the community college in my area, and I signed up for classes. No. And I told them I have to go to Penn State. I said that to them, like, I have to be at Penn State. And they're like, well, honey, you don't have the grades for that. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I need to go there. And so they wouldn't help me, like, you know, at the transfer office. They're like, well, here's a book you can look through. Like, the woman, like, refused to help me. Oh, no. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I guess I'm on this on my own, you know? So, yes, I went to community college, and then I transferred to Penn State. I was talking to my aunt at the time, and she's like, you know, you should see if they have a paranormal group up there. I'm like, oh, you know, that's a good idea. So I checked, and they did. At this time, I went to one meeting, and I had to stop going at that time because I had just transferred. I was double major, and all this shit happened like all at once. When I transferred, my house got broken into. I sprained my ankle. I had this like horrible sinus infection that lasted for weeks. Like it was so bad where I remember I was walking on campus and I fell over. Oh my God. Because my equilibrium was so off from a sinus infection. So it was like, oh no. Yeah. So I didn't go. And then I went back like a year and a half, 2 years later. And they had a program to go. They actually had a training course to be an investigator. And you had to apply for it. You had to be accepted. So they accepted me to that. And then they were like, guys, we're having these, they're not really auditions, but it was just like, come out to be in front of the camera to make sure you don't freeze up in front of a camera. You can actually like be normal in front of a camera, you know? Right. So I went to that, and lo and behold, that's how I got involved with Paranormal State. And that ran on A&E from 2007 to 2011. And that followed the group I was in, the Paranormal Research Society, which started off as a club at Penn State. It followed us on our cases, which we usually worked with residential, occasionally doing bigger places, but normally residential. So that's how it all started.
How did Paranormal Lockdown start? How were you approached with this?
Yeah, so when, you know, the paranormal community is a pretty small field. And if you're in it, you know, you kind of know everybody, even if you haven't met them.
That's very true.
Especially if you're on television in the paranormal field, it's a smaller field. So you kind of know everybody just by association. So Nick and I knew of each other, but we had never officially met. And, you know, we had worked with each other's friends and things like that, but we just never met ourselves. And it was actually really fun. It was another of those, like, I felt like something was kind of like leading me to this project, because at the time I was working on another project, and it didn't feel right. You know, it no longer felt like it was the right project. It wasn't really making a lot of progress, and I had to make a decision whether or not I was going to continue with that project. And it's so funny. I went outside, and, you know, in like a dramatic moment by yourself, I just like looked up at the sky. I'm like, I need to know that I'm making the right decision. And I walked a few feet, I don't know, maybe 15 feet into my backyard, and I looked down, and I found it was a 6-leaf clover and a 5-leaf clover.
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that as a sign that I'm making the right decision.
Pennsylvania known for their nuclear power plants.
right. And literally the next day, Nick, he cold emailed me, and then he cold called me. And he was just like, what are you working on right now? And that's how we started working together.
And then
that's great.
And then did you approach Destination America? Did they approach you?
No, Nick had already had a working relationship with them.
I see.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he pitched the show, or they just figured out some content, because they've really gone paranormal.
Yeah,
that's their content.
Yeah,
it's Paranormal America.
It basically is. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of they've done a lot in that field, and it's great because I think, you know, there was a while, and I mean, I think just in general, if you watch kind of like the popularity of the paranormal in the media, it goes in waves. Mm-hmm. You know, so it was like really like there was Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Paranormal State. All of those were out at the same time, and then all these other shows followed. Then it kind of dropped off.
Right. Yeah.
And then in the last few years, it's kind of been building. Destination America has been a big part in bringing that back.
And that's
great.
It's great programming.
It is.
It's most enjoyable right about now. And that's something else I wanted to ask about. It's before you were just exploring paranormal phenomena, but now you're on a well-broadcast show. Do you feel any pressure to find paranormal evidence, or do you find that it pretty much comes along with the territory and you just have to,
So I've been very lucky where I have worked with productions that they're kind of like, okay, you guys are the experts, not us. You guys go in and do your thing, and we're just there to follow. And especially with Paranormal Lockdown, because it's Nick's production company. So, it's not like we have this outside production company coming in with their ideas of what they think would work. It's Nick's production company. And Rob has been doing this for over 10 years himself as far as working on paranormal shows. So he also understands how to, kind of give us our space when we need it to do our investigation properly. So I think that's, I've been very lucky where I've worked with really wonderful production companies who are just kind of like, you just do your thing. I think it really depends on the people that are working on the project with you. And I've been very lucky where I don't work with people who pressure me for that. And to be honest, guys, I wouldn't work with people who do that. And I've been very upfront about that with anyone who approaches me about a project. And that's usually the first question I ask, because, I've been approached about doing many projects in the paranormal, and it's the first question I ask is, well, what are you going to do if there's nothing that's being found? And if I'm on the other line with a producer who's like, well, it's a TV show, we're going to do whatever we got to do to, make it, meaning that they would fake things, that's pretty much the end of my conversation with them. So I'm very lucky where I've never been involved in that situation where producers are coming to me and being like, we got to fake things.
Right.
Or
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or at least give the audience the impression that it's what's happening and it's not what's happening.
Right. And the thing is, I just find it really silly. I mean, I guess it's one thing to be a reality show, like where it's like a bunch of, I don't know, like Jersey Shore, and if they're like making up storylines or something, that's one thing. But I think it's a completely other thing where, I mean, our show is to find the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's just, I find it silly to, like, if you would make that up, I find that very silly. I think also it's a disservice to the people who are in the field and the people who experience the stuff daily. Because especially when I was with Paranormal State, we dealt with residential homes and clients. On Lockdown, we don't deal so much with residential. Occasionally, it's a lot of bigger locations that might not be someone's home where someone lives all the time. But I can tell you on my experience with Paranormal State, where I was dealing with that, this stuff happens all over the world, and it happens, and it could be happening to your neighbor, and you probably have no clue.
Yeah.
And
right.
and the thing that happens is because it's not in the scientific community, it's not established yet. There are scientists who believe in it. There are psychologists who believe in it, doctors who believe in it, etc. But it's not established and accepted as a whole yet. And because of that, there's a lot of stigma that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that go through this feel so alone and feel outcast. They feel like they're crazy. I have been on the other end of the phone with clients who tell me they're suicidal because of it, that they're anxious, they're depressed. I've been on the other end of the phone with a client who told me that they were homicidal because of it.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
right.
I just think, whatever, people are going to make the shows that they're going to make. But no, I have been very lucky where I work with very respectful productions who let us do what we would do. We've
talked to a lot of paranormal investigators, and a lot of them have been involved in various aspects of media. And as I'm finding, even just inviting groups down to Fort Mifflin for that event, just looking in PA alone, there were like 100 registered paranormal groups.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I don't think had a lot of validation or credit. So as we've been going to the show, I've learned to screen. Before I was just anxious to get them all in. I believed them all. It was great. And then as I began working with these people and talking to them, but I just figured they were on the up and up. They were honest, and so they would have all the answers to my questions. But as I answered more and more detailed questions about what they had written or done, their answers either started contradicting or they stopped talking to you.
You start to realize that not all of it's...
And then you read the books, and there is a difference. Like fill in, we're
we're narrative authors. We're fictional. You're a filmmaker and an author. Right. I'm an author. We know how to tell the story, and a story is a build. It's a climactic build with a beginning, middle, and end. I find the ghost books about people's paranormal experiences, the real ones, don't have a beginning, middle, and end. It's just a documented story of all these things that have happened. Sometimes there's a build-up, but most of the time this just went on for 2 years, and finally we couldn't take it and left. And then you have the Amityville Horror-like stories, where first it's the toilets flushing the black goo, and then the demons are chasing them down the stairs and running out of the house. And you've learned to weed out people who are using their experiences and dramatizing more for financial gain. As opposed to those who really had legitimate experiences.
Right. And I think sometimes it's a little bit of both, because, and I mean, here's something that I tell everybody when I do lectures, because there are always a lot of questions about the television shows. Are they fake? Are they real? And, you have to understand that they're not producers or production companies who are trying to tell a story. They're not bad people. They're not trying to screw anybody over, but that's their job, to tell a story.
Yeah.
They're not paranormal investigators. So I think if you're ever in a position where you're approached about doing a television show and you're in a paranormal group, it's your job to tell them how you want to make this your show. You know what I mean? Like, tell them that you're not okay with A, B, and C. And same goes for books, like you were talking about. I think if you're going to turn your story into a book and you want to keep it as real as possible, then it's your job to tell whoever's writing. If you have like a ghostwriter or an editor that's working with you or whatever, it's your job to make sure that your story is being told the way you want it to be told. I was told a very long time ago, and I think it's really good advice in any facet of the entertainment industry, is that if it's not done on your terms, it might not be worth having. So, because at the end of the day, you have to live with what's being put out there.
You have to be true to yourself.
and true to your fans.
Right.
Because that's
your fans.
Exactly.
Because I find that the belief system of the fans of the paranormal can be quite fickle. It can turn pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The like spiritual beliefs, you mean?
Oh no, more like the belief in the paranormal groups that people are following.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and the thing is too, I've actually seen this die off a lot since kind of how we were saying how the paranormal shows go in waves. I saw this die off after probably like the first or second wave came through of shows. But at first, like when Paranormal State was out, there were a ton of groups that popped up, and there were a lot of groups that didn't have the best intentions. Right. They literally just wanted to get famous. They didn't care about the field. They didn't care about the people that they were working with. They would make things up, and it's just, I mean, I guess, I don't know, I guess whatever, to each their own, but I take offense to that especially when you're working with families who are very much so just looking for help.
Well, just so you know, the truth about me and Phil, we're just trying to get famous. That's just it. We're just putting that out right now. Well, actually, we always like to say we're not paranormal investigators. We're parajournalists.
Yes, exactly.
Parajournalists. There you go.
We're parajournalists. We're out to
report on the people that do it.
We're here to tell the stories. We're not really equipped to do the investigations, but
right.
I have a reading from Mercy I'd like to do from my book from Bloodbound Books called Mercy, about my visceral experiences going through radiation and chemotherapy, about what it feels like to be violated, and that made horrific metaphor in this novel that I wrote for Bloodbound Books. And this is What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on ParaX Radio, EMC, and all podcast services. And you can find more information about this episode, Katrina Weidman, and everything else we're doing for Countdown to Halloween at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. It's a beautiful website, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah,
the new one is really nice.
We really outdid ourselves. We actually look professional, Phil.
Yes.
I know, awesome. And this is Katrina Weidman, and I'm doing a little reading from Mercy, my novel from Bloodbound Books, and we'll be right back with the amazing Katrina Weidman.
A reading from Mercy by T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. The good Dr. Sullivan wheeled Willie into the linear accelerator room. The stink of ozone gagged him, so he held his breath, trying not to inhale the metal-flavored odor. The machinery buzzed and popped, and Willie's pulse aligned to the beat. It made him think of cherry soda, and you could taste it,
felt it tickling his nose. His few remaining hair stood up on his head and down his neck. The good doctor leaned over him on the stretcher and gazed through him from behind black ink lenses. His goggles sucked to his face. Willie wondered if the doctor even had eyes underneath the dark shields. Sullivan poked at Willie's face, playing along the temples and tickling his cheeks. Willie felt the urge to giggle like a child. Yes, coming along nicely. Now we'll just give my Lucifer a few moments to warm up. He's not a morning person. The good doctor threw some levers, and gears spun into action, turning and swirling like glittery pinwheels. Were you always a doctor? Willie asked. Oh, yes. I was a doctor before there was disease. I was the cure before the ailment. Morphine still circulated in his system and had him floating a bit. He knew the danger he suffered, the mortal fate coming, and a mortal loss. But the morphine had removed his self-preservation, his care for life, and he felt relieved to be rid of it. He'd started slicing it away in the car ride when he took her pills, the time he attempted suicide. He hadn't realized, but that was what he was doing. He just took one pill at a time until it started to hurt, and then he took more to make it stop. They say you are a good doctor. I cure all my patients of their worst diseases, he said, pushing Willie over to the table. I take away the pain. He injected Willie with the magic serum, and Willie's mind dissipated. He joined to the dark home world. Straw wove into his mind. Rubber gloves fused with his skin. He sank into the fabric of the hospital and spilled through to the other side. In his blurred vision, he could make out a dancing crimson light. I'm in pain, he said. His mouth not quite dissolved from the radiation room. I know, my friend. I can smell it. I can sense. It burns away the sun. I can help you. I am known as kind. I live to cure you of your greatest disease. Cancer? Life! With one hand, the good doctor lifted Willie from the stretcher, snapping the straps, and gently cradled him, holding him close to his chest. Willie smelled the leather and remembered his father's belts. The image burned in his mind, then it slipped away like a spilled drink. There now, all at peace. The doctor set him on the table, and Willie declined to struggle. He lay there enjoying the peace and security the good doctor granted him. Look who's up, Lucifer growled, rising from his den beneath the floor. The arm lifted. The screen elevated, and the good doctor swung it over the stainless steel table. The linear accelerator poured with anticipation. Mercury dripped from its fangs. The good Dr. Sullivan helped Willie disrobe, then inserted the wax block into his mouth, carefully, holding his head steady. You may notice some side effects, the good doctor said. Visitors at times. Just ignore them. We are changing you in deep ways. You'll be a new man. Willie shut his eyes, and the good doctor pulled the lever and guided Lucifer. The machine growled, jumped, and spun its teeth, biting the air. I only wish to take away the pain, William. I knew you when chaos bore you. I knew your father and his father. I ended their pain. I would take away yours, too. Lucifer buzzed, and a white light burned from its mouth, a bright shaft firing like an arrow from a dark bow, from the oblivion in its heart. Buried deep in the machine creature, the church organ played its melancholy melody, reverberating off the sterile metal walls of the chamber. Lucifer moved over Willie, and drove its teeth into his flesh, this time cutting deeper. Where the beast touched, sharp pain ripped, and then it numbed. The beast devoured layers of flesh, leaving the muscle, exposing his true self beyond the skin. Willie could see his arms, the white skin cut away. Don't worry about that, the good doctor assured. We'll fix that. We've got plenty of parts. You're on your way, Willie lad. No more pain. Lucifer belched, then shut its mouth. Willie fell the rest of the way into the other world, adorning the Scarecrow. And that was a reading from Mercy by T. Fox Dunham, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major booksellers.
Happy Halloween and support indie horror.
Mercy, a new horror medical thriller from author T. Fox Dunham, published by Bloodbound Books. Based on the author's horrific battle with a rare form of lymphoma that involved intense chemotherapy and radiation, Fox turns the horror of his experience into terror on the page.
William Sane is dying of cancer. On most days, death seems like a humane alternative to the treatment. Stricken with fever, William is rushed to Mercy, notorious as a place to send the sickest of the poor and uninsured to be forgotten, and finds the hospital in even worse condition than his previous visit.
Willie's memories faded. He grabbed his sack head of the scarecrow, picking at the exposed chicken wire to hold them in. However, the memories fell out of the holes in his face. They wormed and crawled from the leather flesh and the old clothing of the scarecrow, then squirmed and wiggled down his body.
The grounds are unkempt, the foundation is cracking, and like the wild mushrooms sprouting from the fissures of decay around it, something is growing inside the hospital. Something dark.
Fangoria gives Mercy 3.5 out of 4 skulls. Dunham has channeled his many brushes with the other side into the exquisitely rendered, lyrical, supernatural hospital thriller Mercy.
It's feeding on the sickness and sustaining itself on the staff, changing them, and now it wants Willie.
Come now, Mr. Saint. Just a little more of that sweet milk. So salty and so good. You won't miss it. And we ever do so like our delicacies here at Mercy Hospital.
Part medical horror, part supernatural suspense, Mercy is a hard-hitting fever dream of a novel. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Tim Wagner, author of The Way of All Flesh and Eat the Night. Available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookstores everywhere in both print and digital versions.
Life is an addiction.
Let go. Let it all burn.
You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows, visit electronicmediacollective.com.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid of? Horror Paranormal Show Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatayouafraidofpodcast.com.
What Are You Afraid of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction.
We are ready to scare you.
Para X.
We're back. Very good job, Fox.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes.
You liked Mercy?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, it was something I wanted to talk about because we're approaching Samhain. We're approaching Halloween. I attend Quaker meeting, but I also practice pagan belief systems. Mm-hmm. With Druidic and Bardic faith, and Samhain has always been a very important holiday to me because, as a lot of our listeners know, and a lot of the writing I did was that I was a lymphoma patient at 18. I had a very rare cell type. I had a Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's, a large cell complex, and nobody had ever survived this kind of lymphoma before.
I know.
Fortunately, I was treated by the only person who had treated the last case in Africa, Giles McKenna, out of the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania, where I had intense chemotherapy and 6 months of radiation every day. They were taking me down to Penn.
I honestly couldn't even imagine
to get burned on the four mantles, and that's what I wrote. The book was more about radiation because that was brutal, mm-hmm. That was intense, and it just eats you alive. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was done, I was 80 pounds, and
wow.
Right in the middle course. It was about
I never knew that.
It was about October 5th. I was still playing Dungeons and Dragons with friends, mm-hmm. and I was still keeping it up. I was doing Ravenloft with it, which is a gothic horror, and I was kind of channeling all what I was going through into these Ravenloft games, which made them terrifying for my players. But I had just finished a game, and I wasn't doing well. I was so sick that I couldn't lift my head up off the table, and yet I'm storytelling this game. Mm-hmm. And they took me to the hospital that night and suspended the radiation, and I died. I died a few days later in the intensive care unit. This was at the old Del Val by Sesame Place. Right. And my mom was a nurse there, actually. And then I came back. And I came back. Yeah. I didn't go all the way. It didn't click.
Right.
And when I came back, that's when my recovery began. It was like this climactic battle that had led to this one night where it finally killed me, and then I survived the worst. And after that, the tumor started shrinking. The lymph nodes started evaporating. The treatment was working.
You need to die to live.
Right. Yeah. And I came out of that. It was October 31st when they let me go home.
Halloween.
Samhain, And I'll never forget, how incredible everything felt. Of course, I had friends come over, and we decided to go trick-or-treating, even though I was 18 years old, and we just found stuff around the house. I think I put some grease paint on my face, one of Groucho Marx. My friend grabbed a vacuum cleaner. He was a maid, and we got all this candy together that I couldn't eat because my throat had swollen so badly from scar tissue that I couldn't swallow anything solid. So here I am, gumming this candy, getting the chocolate off and letting it melt down. Right. But the experience profoundly changed me. Mm. Yeah. And it was like a door in me that night that opened. Mm. And suddenly I became I've always talked about being very sensitive to things, and people ask, are you psychic or whatever, and it's difficult because people, when they start using terms for things, the terms start growing. And pretty soon you have all these subcategories, and then all of a sudden it's like the psychics who come into people's haunted houses, and one day it's one psychic going, you have 6 spirits here. His name's Philip and Bob and Sam, and then another woman will come in a week later and go, well, this lady was murdered here, and there are 8 actual spirits here and 1 dog, and right. There's a sort of fine line. You've got to keep it in control and question yourself. But I became very open to things after that. I'm very sensitive to things, not only in death, but also in nature. Right. And that's just something I like to let my fans know what Samhain means to me. Mm-hmm. And it is the time of death and rebirth. It's the New Year, essentially. Yeah, I mean, pagan New Year. Right. Celtic New Year. Right. Yes. And it's the life cycle. Remember, we had Montana Jordan, Katie Montana Jordan, on last year. Yes. Telling us all about it. And that was just a wonderful show. You can check that out at our website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com, and you can hear Katie's show, Samhain. We had Katie and Krampus. Yeah, and Krampus. Yeah. That's right. She dated the Krampus. Are they still dating? I think so. I think she's still seeing Krampus. He's still dating Krampus, okay. Even though he killed us at the end. Right. We always get killed at the end. The Killer Bunny, the Krampus, right. The clowns. But then we come back. So. Then we come back, yeah. That's okay. But yeah, we are here with Katrina Weidman. Mm-hmm. Hello, Katrina. So, on your show, Paranormal Lockdown, you stayed at a location for 72 hours. Now, you say that the longer you stay at a place, the more the spirits will communicate. What is the reason for that? Is it because they're becoming more comfortable with you being there, or is there other reasons? Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this, but generally speaking, this is something that both Nick and I felt when we were starting this project, and the thing that I love about the concept of lockdown is because it's very true to what investigators do in actual investigations. You don't just go for one night and then you leave. If you're actually on an investigation or working with clients, I mean, I've had clients that we've had for years. We've had to go back multiple times. And if you look at people that live in haunted houses, or even, say, a property owner who's buying an old asylum, okay, it's not like the first night you move in or the first night you buy a property, all this crazy stuff is going to happen. Right. It happens over a period of time. Right. And it happens when people aren't looking for it. The reason why Nick and I have been successful in gathering objective evidence on our investigations is because we're living there. Right. 2, we're spending as much time in the environment as we can. And 3, although there's a lot of our investigation is active investigation, where I say, we're actually looking for these things. Because we're there for so long, there's times where we're eating, or there's times where we're trying to stretch, or there's times where we're getting ready for our day, or there's times we're going over evidence the night before or the day before. And so there's times where we're not actively investigating, but we're still investigating. And a lot of times that's when we'll experience things. When you least expect it. When you least expect it. And I think it's other than actually moving into a place permanently, doing investigations like this, where you're there for 72 hours, for example, is the next best thing, because I think it's recreating that environment that a homeowner would have. I have found that, like I said earlier, some of the most profound experiences I've had in this field have been since I started working on Lockdown with Nick. That's great. That's amazing. But that's fantastic. By the way, the meatloaf, très magnifique. Really? Okay, great. It's beautiful. I'll be putting a picture up it on the website. Fox's amazing mashed potato meatloaf casserole. Yes. Nice. What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal cooking show. You should take some ketchup or something and just kind of
do a little cursive Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween from Meatloaf
Happy
Country.
Samhain or whatever. Yeah.
I do want to eventually expand into cooking on the show. That'd be very hard to do and fun.
Nice. So Katrina, you're also the co-founder of a paranormal group called Atherton Paranormal. Can you tell us about that?
I co-founded it with Josh Light and Heather Taddy, who I worked with both of them on in the Paranormal Research Society, and we're just a very tiny group, and it's really, we offer a lot of remote assistance because our resources are low and obviously our manpower is low. But it was a way we all really wanted to get back into working with clients again. All of us kind of needed, and I don't want to speak for them, but so I guess I'll just keep it for me. But I mean, I know me specifically, I was very burnt out when we finished Paranormal State because it was so many clients over such a short amount of period of time. And it wasn't just the clients that we had on the show. You know, we were fielding, there was a whole other list of potential clients that we were trying to help and all that stuff. So it was just, I needed to take a break from that because I had felt at the time when Paranormal State stopped that I was not in a good place in my life. And I think when you work with people that are going through any kind of trauma, and, you know, in a way, a paranormal experience can be a trauma because it's something that our brains can't comprehend. So we try to figure it out. It can really affect people.
That was something that impressed upon me of the difference between Paranormal State and Paranormal Lockdown. Is that in Paranormal State, you were traveling, helping clients who were being haunted by some very evil or hurtful things.
Yeah.
And I imagine, and I know the show must turned into a war as I'm watching the dialogue progress. And you were, I mean, I can only imagine the psychological toll and the spiritual toll that must have, like walking into a toxic waste dump every night.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, very much so because, and it's funny because so I started out in school as a psych major and I very quickly learned that I was not cut out for that. I'm not someone who can, easily separate someone else's emotions from my own, you know, as far as like I feel a lot of what somebody is going through. You know, when we were working on Paranormal State, there was so much going on as far as what our clients were experiencing that I would just take home with me every single night. And I didn't know how to help them properly in a lot of ways. So I actually, thank God, I was in State College at the time, and they had a wonderful crisis counseling center up there. I signed on to be a crisis counselor, and they had a phenomenal training course, 6-month training course that I went through. And then it was like 2 months of shadowing. You're training with another counselor, and then you're on your own. I got a really great background in crisis counseling, and that helped me tremendously in the field of the paranormal. And not only for myself as learning how to, okay, I can't take this person's emotions with me home tonight. You know, I gotta leave it at work. But it was also, I think it was a great benefit to working with clients because I could better understand how to help them when they were coming to me with, I'm feeling depressed and I don't know what to do. And, you know, that kind of thing. I was better able to assess it too. And we had to refer out to the psychologists who did work with us.
I imagine that's a very useful skill to have. Yes. Atherton Paranormal. So it's another investigation group. Your goal is to go in, gather evidence, and to help families and to help people who are having problems with the paranormal. How is the process like of getting clients? I mean, do you think your fame's going to affect who calls you? I mean,
somewhat, every now and again, we'll get an inquiry that's very much like, you know, you can kind of just tell that they're a fan, and I don't know, you know, maybe they just want to talk and they don't really need help. But I would say, and, you know, we went through that a lot in Paranormal State. There was a lot of people that, I don't know, I guess would pose as needing help, but they really didn't.
I think the best ones would be the ones that call and just have absolutely no idea who you are.
Right.
Yeah, right. You know?
I get that there was stuff with Paranormal State that would happen. And even with Atherton, there's people that are just like, I honestly didn't know who you guys were. But my friend told me to contact you. I looked you guys up. And, you know, but I would say for the most part, I would say generally speaking, most people who contact and reach out are just honestly looking for answers. There's no place to go for answers. And I think the benefit, you know, we were talking about the shows earlier, and the biggest benefit I've seen come out of paranormal shows and all these paranormal groups emerging is that it's opened that dialogue for people. And it's allowed people who do have these experiences to say, you know what, okay, I'm not so alone. and I've had these experiences, and this person in Pennsylvania, even though I'm in Japan, are having the same experiences as me. And they're not crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm not crazy. People are having this. This is happening. Mm-hmm. So I think the shows have really, I think in that way, they've done a great service to people who have been going through this.
It's nice you're getting back into the field, because the other thing I noticed about Paranormal Lockdown is that it's more of an investigation. You're more in public historic places, museums, mm-hmm. and places like that, as opposed to going in and helping families that are having current infestation
and I mean,
issues.
we do try a lot of, especially as of late, there's been a lot of property owners that have reached out to us just being like, can you guys help us? So they might not be a family living there permanently, but they're property owners who are like, I don't know what's going on. Can I open this place for business? So we always try to go in with the goal of helping. A lot of times we pick bigger, more iconic places because I think mm-hmm. then you're just raising the probability for something to happen.
Is there a singular experience during your entire time as an investigator that just sticks out in your mind as being one of the most frightening?
Ooh, tell us a story or two.
Yes, please.
I will tell you the story of the one that shook me the most. I actually wanted to cry. I have wanted to cry from emotional reasons on investigations, meaning like I said earlier, I feel a lot. Like I very easily pick mm-hmm. up on maybe what someone else felt when they were in that room, when they were alive, or just other things maybe other investigators have felt. I pick up on that stuff very easily. So I've wanted to cry from that kind of stuff, or a story that somebody has told me. Like, these two people were murdered in this room. I always want to cry whenever I hear that. But this is the only investigation where I cried because of activity. And we were investigating in England. And in America, we know it as the Black Monk House. In England, they know it as 30 East Drive. And it's a haunting that started in 1966 to the Pritchard family. It started out kind of just, they had things materializing in the air and they would fall to the floor and we're like, oh, that's weird. And then and the activity just intensified for them so quickly that it became, according to the daughter that was growing up there, she was dragged up the stairs by an unseen force. And the mother actually lived there until the last few years. She had actually sold her house. They made a movie about their story, and she had sold her house with a lot of the contents in it to the man who made the movie, and he allows people to go there and investigate now, which is great because it's actually a lot of the family heirlooms are still there. So it's very much set up the way that it was when the Pritchards lived there. And we went to investigate it, and we were actually there longer. We were there for 100 hours. Very tiny house. It's in the middle of a neighborhood, and it's a nice neighborhood. Like when we were, and you could see the neighbors out in the day. There were kids riding bikes, and it just seemed like a nice little neighborhood. And you would never think anything like this would happen in a neighborhood like that. But we had a lot of experiences during our time there. But it climaxed to, there's a closet in the house that they call the coal hole, where they used to store their coal. And back in the 60s, Joe, the father of the family, who was kind of more skeptical, even though they were having experiences, one night he got locked in the coal hole, for like hours, and he was terrified. And something happened to him in there, but he would never talk about it. But afterwards, everyone who knew him said he completely changed after that experience and changed for the worse. So I was in the coal hole. I had the door open, and I wasn't even really actively investigating yet. I was just sort of standing there, just getting a feel for things. I was alone, and my hands were down at my side. I was wearing 2 shirts. My nails were freshly filed. And I felt this intense burning on my stomach. Now, talking to, I've spoken to thousands of eyewitnesses to the paranormal at this point, and I know from their testimony that whenever someone is scratched, it starts out as this intense burn. And so my first thought when I was feeling it, I kind of stood there. I'm like, no way. Absolutely no way is this happening. And I lifted up my 2 shirts, and sure enough, there were 2 fresh scratch marks on my skin. And the one had started to break open the skin a little bit, where there was, some blood coming.
They were bleeding. They broke the skin?
The one did. The other one was just a scratch mark that hadn't fully broken the skin. But I called for Nick and Rob, because they were together at the time. And they came and got me, and the next 30 minutes, I just probably Poor Nick. I think he was like honestly scared for me because I just started rambling, and I just wanted to cry, and I wanted to leave. I just wanted to go home. But I know better. Like I've worked with a lot of investigators over the years, like Lorraine Warren and a lot of priests, and
right.
you know, whatever you believe, whether you want to call it demonic or something else, whatever.
That's something.
Yeah, these power forces, whatever they are. What I've been taught is that you don't feed into them. So even if you get scratched, don't give them the best of you. So that's, I was trying to remember that in my head at the time, but it was very hard. That experience completely shook me because, it's one thing to have a figure show up on your camera. It's another thing to see a figure with your own eyes, or to see an object move, or to hear a disembodied voice. But when it happens to your body, it is, I don't know how to explain it other than it just shatters everything you ever thought you knew about how our world works.
Your comfort zone's
completely.
gone.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I always say this, 100 years from now, we could all be laughing at it because maybe there is a scientific explanation other than what we call spirit. We don't have that now, so I don't know what that is. I don't know what can, I don't know what can do that to your body. And
that's something I want to come back to. We should pause here to play another part of Daniel Broom's short story, A Man's Guide to Costumes and the Most Common Ways to Get Arrested, that appears in the Wish Mechanics, Stories of the Strange and Fantastic. And it's a neat little Halloween story set out in the Las Vegas desert that he recorded for us. And this is part 3 of Daniel Broom's A Man's Guide to Costumes and the Most Common Ways to Get Arrested on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror and Paranormal Show on Para-X Radio, on Friday nights, EMC, all major podcast services, and broadcasting into space and time.
And now, we play you A Man's Guide to Costumes and the Most Common Ways to Get Arrested from The Wish Mechanics, Stories of the Strange and Fantastic by horror author Daniel Broom. Check out his website at www.danielbroom.com.
3. Motel rooms in Las Vegas. Oscar drove the Charger too fast through the motel parking lot. A neon vacancy sign flashed in front of the old, low-rise building. A procession of about a dozen ghost and skeleton costumed people danced among the parked cars under the 2 a.m. sky. Ed struggled to make out the colors of their costumes, but they all seemed gray. "Careful. You're going to hit them," Ed said. "Who?" Oscar asked. The costumed dancers were gone. Oscar stopped the car by the little office and they pulled out. An old man drank from a bottle labeled Rattleshake chocolate milk. "2 rooms, please," cat-suited woman said. "2?" Oscar asked. "One for the boys? One for you two?" "No, one for us, one for them," she said. Oscar and cat-suited woman were all over each other on the way to the rooms. Good for him, Ed thought. He tried to conjure the memory of the warmth of the sexy cop's skin, but couldn't get the image of the glass shard in her husband's face from his mind. No way he was going back in over him. "This way," Miss Sugarskull said. The walls were thin. Ed sat next to her on the bed and listened to his brother and her sister laughing and doing shots of something. "What was she like?" "Your Francisca," she said. "What?" "Your wife. Your ex-wife." "You mean my dead wife?" "She thinks she's your ex-wife." Ed remembered the sting, the slap of her hand across his face, her wedding ring drawing blood, making the cut that left the scar on the side of his jaw. "We never got the divorce. We were going to. When it all went down," Ed said, then paused. They listened to the laughter from the other room. "How do you know what she thinks?" Ed asked. "Doesn't matter. When what went down?" "The last job. Listen, I'm happy Asker's making time with your sister, but I don't want any trouble. I need to get back home before my P.O. knows I'm gone, okay? You know what today is? Day after Halloween? Day of the Dead? That mean anything to you? No, should it? Does your wife mean anything to you?" Ed thought he was going to say just how much she did, but he found he couldn't speak. He felt his arms close around Francisca's waist, the familiar thrum of his bike as she gunned it, and everything went blurry, then black. The loss of blood, the alcohol. How it was she who got them home that first wild night together. I don't talk about me. What about you? You have an old man? No. No? Pretty girl like you, smart, tough, why not? My sister and I have a gift. Life can be a burden when you're special. A round of laughter and voices broke out next door. Were there more people in there? Some pop song kicked in. The wall vibrated with bass. Were they starting another party? Never met a man strong enough, Miss Sugarskull said. She opened her bag and took out a t-shirt and jeans and moved to the area with the mirror and sink. She ran the faucet and wiped her face. Black and white makeup smeared to gray. She lifted off her skull bones top, wriggled out of her skirt, and changed clothes. Oh, and you think I'm strong enough? Ed asked. No. I'm not here to party or to find a man. My sister. That's why she's here. She's seen too much and doesn't think straight anymore. Someone pounded on the door of Oscar's room. Turn it down or else, the old man from the office said. Fuck, Ed said. Oscar's going to be the death of me. No, he's not. But it's time to leave. Now? Come on, let's go. We were never going to get them to come. Now. Never was about them. It's about you. And her. The music lowered. One more time and I'm calling the cops, the old man said. Right here was where he knew his brother wanted to be, but he knew he needed to get the hell out of here. Ed opened the door and saw the old man ambling back to the office. Miss Sugarskull took his hand and they darted to the car. She got behind the wheel. Ed felt lightheaded and the back of his arm itched. He saw more costumed people dancing on the side of the road, but when he glanced back, they were gone. You're going east, he said. I know. Come on, you know I have to get home. Take it west. You've got something to do first. You're going to get me arrested. What? Take off your costume. Ah, come on, Ed said. He let her drive. The white lines blurred into one long streak as they accelerated. He could open the door, roll out, but would she call the cops? He could still make it home in time if they hurried through whatever she had in mind, wherever she was taking him. Now's the time you tell me about her, she said. I said I don't talk about me. Talk. Ed kept silent for a few minutes, but as the miles rolled on, he found himself speaking. I was done. Done with the life. I had a job. A good one. I was a mechanic at the garage with Mickey Samuels, a guy I went to high school with. It wasn't a union job, but it was good pay, and I had weekends off. Then her mother went downhill. Started losing it, lost her job, lost her place. Moved in with us. Fran started taking care of her, to the point she lost her job too. Then I was paying for everyone. We were barely making it. Then we decided to do one last job, and then I'd be out. Mickey knew of a cross-country shipment. 20 cars, most of them new, nothing fancy. He was going to have them chopped for parts. Our cut would be 10 grand. All we had to do was get the driver out of the way and drive the truck 2 miles. 2 miles to the shop. It was closer, but the route avoided a red light camera and a main street with a couple of security cams. It was supposed to be easy. Knock him out at the rest stop, Mickey said. The guy always stopped there. But the guy fought back. Pushed her. Middle of the night. A car was coming too fast on the on-ramp. She got hit. Never woke up. Her mom pulled the plug 2 weeks later. My grand larceny charge was up to manslaughter. For that, I got 3 years. 3 years. 3 years and I never told anyone, Ed thought. How the hell did she just get me to talk? There. I told you. You're so quiet. Nothing to say? No, Miss Sugarskull answered. Damn, you're cold. Gotta be. You left them without a car. My sister's resourceful. She'll get by. They have nowhere they have to be. It's you that has to get home. So we are going home. No, you know that. Tonight we're going somewhere else.
Caliburn Press, LLC is a Madison, Wisconsin-based publishing company owned and operated by Alan Ledden. Caliburn works with talented writers, artists, editors, and marketers throughout the United States, and you can find their books through their many imprints that include Damnation Books, Eternal Press, Malaferia Press, Ciento Sordida Publishing, and Spiro Publishing. Please visit their website at sites.google.com/site/Caliburn Press LLC/home, or Google Caliburn Press to check out their growing list of titles on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other place fine books are sold.
We thank our musical talent tonight for contributing their music, all of course rights reserved by the performers. First we had the Friendly Monster Shop by the Zombie Dandies, and then we had our old friend back, Willie Boo Walker, with Rain on My Footsteps. Willie Boo Walker and the Rattlin' Bone Theater Show. You can find information about both artists at the website at www.whatareyoufraidofpodcast.com. Great little story about Daniel Brum.
That's good.
He's a great author. He's doing some good things up in New York, writing his heart out. He's got a very Ray Bradbury subtlety to his work. And he's been out in the field helping us out, recording various experiences and things. We're very glad to have him. We have a lot of what I would call creative carpetbaggers who come out of nowhere and sort of want to help us out.
Yeah.
And sort of contribute material and music, and it's been great featuring them on the show. And we've created a nice little dark magazine at What Are You Afraid of? Horror and Paranormal Show. We're back with Katrina Weidman, ghost adventurer, explorer, healer, and Philadelphia native. Now, we were talking about a terrible incident that happened to you in the coal hole. I mean, that just sounds like a terrible place.
Say, that sounds like a place I would not want to be.
This is the place where bad things happen. It's the coal hole. You know, I don't think anything ever good was associated with.
Nothing with the name coal hole.
No. Well, it was funny. After we finished that investigation, we went on to another investigation. And we finished that, and then I had never been to London before, so I took a few days off, and I went to London. And the hotel I was staying at, my room was on the street, and when I looked out my window, the bar across the street was called the Coal Hole.
No, I was just going to say, please don't tell me it was called.
We're going to find a picture of that.
Oh, man.
So I'm sure... And nothing good ever happened there either.
The Coal Hole followed you.
Yeah. London was an amazing experience. I was fortunate enough to honeymoon. I took my wife back home to Scotland to be married, and we honeymooned in Ireland. And London is just one of the most.
It was amazing. I had a great time there. I think about it often. I was very lucky to go and see it.
So speaking of coal holes, we have had a lot of, shall we call it, the paranormal zoology or cryptozoology, one would almost call it, about what kind of spirits are out there. And there are some people that refer to the legends and mythology, depending on whatever faith system that tunes to them, and others have their own scientific nomenclature for the morphology of what they're seeing. So I want to ask you, what kind of spirit are there out there? We hear a lot about the inhuman and those who were alive.
Yeah, I personally, after being in the field for as long as I have, my views have consistently changed, and I only expect that they will change as the years progress, and as technology gets better, and as science gets better, and we learn more about the field, I assume my views will change. But where I'm at right now with it is I absolutely believe that the paranormal works on a spectrum. And also let me define, because I think people get confused with what the word paranormal means. And paranormal kind of encompasses everything that science can't explain. So it's ghosts, it's aliens, it's spontaneous combustion, it's anything in that realm. So when we're specifically talking about, let's call them spirits, apparitions, ghosts, whatever, in that world, I think there's a spectrum that it works on. I don't think there's just one thing. And often you're referring to, you'll hear us call things human, non-human, negative, non-negative, demonic, not demonic, and generally speaking, it's hard to kind of nail down exactly what that is unless you feel it. It's a lot of the investigations, and people will complain about this sometimes. They say, why do you guys always say you're feeling something? I don't care what you're feeling. I just want to see it. And the thing is, although I can completely understand that complaint, when you're on an actual investigation, that's part of your investigation. Our body is an excellent instrument for picking up on when things feel different. And a really great example I can give to you guys about that is if you've ever walked into a room and there were just two people fighting. You didn't hear them fight, you didn't see them fight, but you walk into that room and you know it was happening because you can feel it. It's
empathy.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same exact thing. Our bodies are very good instruments for picking up on environmental changes like that. And so a lot of times you'll hear us say in our investigations, like, "Oh, I'm having a headache," or "Oh, I feel like my chest is tight." And we're not necessarily saying those things are paranormal or being caused by paranormal. But they're important to note when you're on an investigation because maybe other people who have come through there feel the same thing at the same spot. So then what is that? Is that an environmental change that is explained away naturally? Or is that something that we don't quite understand how to detect yet, giving people's bodies that feeling? So it's really important to understand that there's why we do that. But it's, generally speaking, and again, this kind of depends on what kind of investigator you're talking to. There's very religious investigators, or if you're talking to a priest, they're going to give you a different answer than a scientist is going to give you, obviously. So, but there's also, there's skeptical investigators, and then there's full-out believer investigators. And for myself, I kind of fall in the middle. And I believe that there are more negative energies out there and there's more positive energies out there. And generally speaking, when we see certain things happen in a case, there's certain check marks that have to go off for something to be more negative or more inhuman, as we call it, maybe something that was never living. And you'll see that too, like if somebody ever needs a priest to come in to do an exorcism on a person or a house, it's not like a priest just comes in. Like they need to get permission to do this. And for them to do that, they have a checklist of things that have to happen for them to do it. And it's actually very hard to get the church involved in your case. So it's, honestly, I could talk about this all day because at the end of the day, though, and this is what I'll say, is that until we have scientific proof of what this stuff is made of, how it manifests, how it affects people, how it works in our environment, all these are right now are working theories, really. We know something is happening. And I will tell you something is absolutely happening. People are all over the world for hundreds of years are not just making this stuff up.
No, they're not.
And on top of that, my camera isn't hallucinating. My audio equipment isn't hallucinating.
It's picking something up.
Something is happening. Let's just say, for sake of argument, it is in everyone's mind. That's still something happening. It needs to be explored. It needs to be it needs to be explained, and it deserves an explanation for the people that go through it and experience it. But I think where we're at right now with the paranormal, we have terms, meaning we have the term a ghost and what that means. We have a term spirit, what that means. We have a term demonic, what that means, and then we have phenomena, and we attribute certain terms to certain types of phenomena. I think a lot of investigators will be very upfront about this. We could be totally wrong. You know what I mean? We might find that the type of phenomena that we attribute to being a ghost isn't a ghost, or that we have the wrong definition for that. So it's an ever-evolving field. So it becomes, sometimes it's very hard to explain exactly how it is and how it works because of that.
I really like your interpretation of it because I've never heard actually anyone explain it like that. Like, we're not sure exactly what's happening when something is happening. Someone usually said, "Well, it's a ghost."
That's the beginning.
But I like.
That's the beginning of it.
I like your interpretation of it.
Thank you. And I think
unique.
Thank you.
It's probably the best term we've heard.
Oh, thank you. And it's also, I think a lot of times when you hear investigators, when we say certain terms or when we say this is what we think is happening, we're going off of the best information we have right now, which is where the field is at right now. So we're going off of case studies that have been around since, the 40s, the 50s. We're going off of our own experiences with our own cases, the cases from our colleagues. There does seem to be certain patterns that fit into these terms or this type of phenomena that we see repeated. And of course, we're not in a laboratory, so, it's not a controlled environment. So it becomes a little hard to put a stamp of approval of this is exactly what it is. Again, it comes back to it's an ever-evolving field. But it's when we say something like we believe this is a little boy, well, we're putting that together with logic because we're having what sounds like childlike answers come through on our audio. We're having a smaller figure show up on our camera. We're having eyewitness testimony saying that multiple people have seen a little boy in this area. And then we also have historical information to back up that, yes, there was a little boy who died here. So, it's trying to put together all these puzzle pieces. And again, we're using logic for something that's completely illogical right now.
Right.
But so
right.
I think that's what people have to understand about the paranormal is that it's ever evolving, and even people that have been in the field forever are still learning and changing their methods and, trying to find ways to, I guess, define the field better and also document the field better.
And that's something I was talking about psychics earlier, is, just in the whole field, the moment you start defining this stuff too much, the moment you start, getting too firm with your ideas and start being so sure of what you're seeing and doing, I think that's the moment you start losing touch with exploration in the field and start having more of a fantastic journey. And what I mean by fantastic is more you're losing touch with reality.
Yeah, it can be hard sometimes because as an investigator, I can tell you there's a lot of times, and we experience this all the time, where our subjective experiences lead to objective evidence. So you can't completely abandon the things that you're feeling, even if you have no logical or rational explanation for why you're feeling the way. Like you have to go off of those instincts, because I've seen it happen so many times where it leads to our camera picking something up. And but on some level I agree with you, because it goes back to, I think we have terms on one side and then we have phenomena on the other side, and we kind of have them matched up, but are we matching them correctly?
Right. My thinking is never stop questioning what you're feeling or seeing.
Right. And I think that's an excellent point. And I meet a lot of people. I'll tell you this one story of I was on my way to Dragon Con, and when they pick you up from the airport, sometimes you ride with other speakers. And I was with this gentleman and his wife, and he sat up front, so he wasn't really talking with us, but she and I were in the back. We were just chatting about what we were doing there that weekend, and she's like, "And what do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm a paranormal investigator." And she gave me this look like, "Really?" Like, she was just like, "Oh, God, like, I'm stuck with one of you." I'm like, "Oh, you don't believe?" And she's like, "No, not at all." And I said to her, I was like, "Well," I'm like, "can I ask you?" I'm like, "Do you believe that we have everything figured out in this world?" And she stopped, like, almost like she had never pondered it before. And she's like, "Well, no." And I said, "Okay, well, that's kind of where I come in." Because there's still, you might meet a ton of scientists who tell you that the paranormal field is completely bogus and it's not real, but I bet you not one of them would ever say that we have everything in this world figured out.
Right.
So
and that's the fun.
And that's the thing. It's that, I always come back to, there are people all over the world who have these experiences, and it's been happening for a very long time. And you know what? Sure, let's just say, for sake of argument, half of them can be explained away. Say another half of that you have left can be chalked up to maybe psychological disorders or misinterpretation or just a bad eyewitness account, because we know eyewitness accounts are not always accurate, right? Then say you still have another part of that's being chalked up to, you have to look at how people are perceiving these things based off of their own life experiences and their religion. Because sometimes that determines how someone perceives an experience. But at the end of the day, there's still a group of experiences in there that can't be explained away.
Right. And that's what we need to, basically interpret for ourselves.
Yeah, that's what we tell people. We don't verify, we don't deny, we let our audience judge, we just tell stories.
Right.
Sure, yep.
Has anything ever followed you home?
Yes, multiple times actually at this point. The very first time, though, we were working on a case that we believed to be demonic. When we had gone there, and when I came home, at the time I was living in a townhouse, and it's so funny because every place I ever lived in, and I didn't realize this until I lived in this townhouse, but every place I had lived in before that place had some kind of energy in it. Because when I moved into this townhouse, I noticed I stopped doing all the little things I do as a distraction for myself. So in the haunted houses I've lived in, I'll do things like I'll kind of scurry into a room a little faster and turn on the light. I'll talk to myself a lot. I'll sing out loud a lot. I'll fall asleep with TV on. Just things so I don't have to hear or see anything. And when I moved into this townhouse, I realized I wasn't doing any of that stuff. And when I realized that one day, I was like, why am I not doing any of this stuff? Like, that's weird. That's just me. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm completely comfortable here. I don't feel like there's somebody over my shoulder. I don't feel like I'm being watched. Whatever. But when we went to this one case and I came home, it was shortly afterwards. I had woken up early in the morning, like 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd gone downstairs to get a drink, and it was this overwhelming feeling that there was somebody just staring at me, like a bully, just watching me, coveting me. It got to the point where I was looking out my windows because I was convinced somebody was standing outside in our backyard. I checked the doors, I checked the locks, nobody was there. And, that was kind of it. I went to bed. It just started to progress from there to the point where just little things were happening in that townhouse, like noises, things moving. And it progressed to the point where I was lying in bed one night alone. No one was in my room. And I heard heavy breathing in my ear. And at the time I was working with the Paranormal Research Society. So I had asked them, I said, what should I do? Because I'd never had that happen before. And they said the best thing to do is just ignore it. Eventually it'll go away. So that's what I did. And after, I think it lasted all together, maybe two or 3 months, something like that. And,
oh my.
It's still a long time though.
Yeah, from beginning to end. And it didn't, it probably by the time I heard the heavy breathing, it was already like a month and a half in, something like that.
I just tell my wife to roll over. Do you use sage or salt or any cleansing techniques at all at home?
Yeah.
To protect yourself?
It's funny. I never have until recently. Actually, after I worked on Paranormal State was the first time I did it. When Paranormal State ended, I just felt there was like a lot of negative, whatever you want to call it, juju afterwards. And because we worked on some pretty intense cases. So I did a cleansing then, and it was kind of like a shower cleanse where you just picture the negativity going down the drain, and it's more like a mental cleanse than anything. But recently, within the last 2 years, really since I started working with Nick, I sage every now and again.
I'll be burning sage on the 31st.
Right.
Smudging, as we call it.
Smudging, right.
White light.
Yeah.
Laying down sea salt.
Candles, too. I think that helps. But I think it, and I get this question a lot from people, like, how do I protect myself? And it really, what it comes down to, regardless of your belief system, it comes down to the intent you put into it. And it's all really a mental technique. It's putting out that positive energy and like picturing yourself just like covered in that positive energy and pushing the negativity away. And these are all tools to help you do that. You have to do, if somebody's looking to do that, I think you have to do what feels the most powerful to you.
Moving away from the paranormal for just a moment. You're the lead singer of a band, right?
Yeah.
Called Away from 30.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about what kind of music
please.
you guys play? What kind of influences?
Yeah, so we're an alternative rock band, and we're PA local, so we're all from over PA. I'm Philadelphia, so is our bassist, and then the guitarist and the drummer are from Reading. But we're local, we play local shows and everything, and we all have very different influences, so it would really depend on which band member you're talking to. You get very different answers.
What would your influences be?
Yeah.
Tori Amos is probably my biggest influence ever.
Oh, great.
One of mine, too.
Yeah, I just love her. Because I started out playing piano. And so my own personal songs that I write for me, not with the band, they're very much inspired by Tori. But vocally, Ann Wilson is a big influence of mine.
Oh, yeah, hard.
Yeah. Just saw her in concert this year. She was amazing. Incubus is another influence. I'm kind of in the camp, too. I think anything you hear is an influence, whether you like it or you don't. Because it all kind of helps shape you to a certain place musically. Hole is another big influence of mine.
Do you have any concerts coming up, like any performances in the next few months that you could tell our fans about?
No, not right now. We just finished playing that Shocktoberfest near Reading, though. We did just play there and it was awesome.
Very cool.
But right now we're working on our EP, so we're doing that, and that's our focus right now. And then once that is done, we'll work on shows again. And we'll definitely keep anybody updated if something pops up. You can go to our Facebook page. We're Away from 30, so just look for that and you'll find us. And
I saw it today.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so alternative rock, we We like to have fun. We like to write music.
We're hoping to get some of their music on the show.
Yeah, that would be
yeah. I got to talk to my bandmates about that. I'm sure they will be happy. So
if not this one, another one.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, we have 5 tracks that we're working on right now to release. Hopefully in the next month or so.
So your website is www.katrinaweidman.com.
Yes.
And the website of your paranormal group is athertonparanormal.com.
Yes. Yes.
And we'll have links to that up on the website at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com, where you can also find more information about Paranormal Lockdown, her band, some of the places she's talked about, also about us, Daniel Broom, instructions on how you can buy copies of Mercy from Bloodbound Books, and also Phil's films are up there.
Yes.
You working on any new films, Phil?
Yes, but we probably won't be starting to shoot that probably for another month and a half.
Gotcha.
So it's just pre-production right now.
Do you have a title?
No, we don't have a title. Oh. We don't have a title because I'm not the one writing it. So it's up to the writer to come up with a working title. Yeah.
Gotcha. You're off this one. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to get on the next one with you.
I'm DPing it though.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. And well, Katrina, it has been an extraordinary experience to get you on the show, and I think Phil and I feel far more enlightened about the paranormal.
Yes. Oh yeah. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I was very flattered you guys asked me to come on, so I appreciate it. And all my links for if anyone is interested in my ramblings, they can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm there. And there's like 2 other Katrina Weidmans in the whole world, so you'll find me. And they're also linked on my website. And it has some October things coming up and announcements coming soon with the band. So I can officially say we are filming season 3 of Paranormal Lockdown.
Oh, great.
Yes. Yeah, so it will
Congratulations.
Thank you. It will be out next year, and we have some really amazing locations, and we've been getting some pretty crazy evidence so far. I actually experienced something that I have not experienced before yet with my own eyes. So It was pretty intense. So definitely stay up to date with that. I'll have band announcements soon, and also I'm launching a new blog this month, so people can stay up to date with that.
And we'll keep our fans up to date with all the information about how to find this stuff. Links on our website at www.whatafraidofpodcast.com. We'll keep our fans communicating with you guys.
Okay, great.
So before we go, I know you're a Golden Girls fan.
Yes. Oh my, the Golden Girls fan. Yes.
I think my wife might compete with you there.
Oh, challenge.
Because she is. Okay, I know, but she loves Sophia.
There is this emerging thing with Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I've known within the last 6 months of about 3 or 4 people that have been obsessed over the Golden
Girls.
Girls.
They're amazing.
Yeah. This is like something that's just fairly new, though. I mean, 2 years ago, this is unheard of.
Well, they were so controversial and on the edge at the time.
Right.
You know, they dealt with so many. And my wife's favorite quote is from Sophia, of course, and she's talking about when they find out their friend is a lesbian, and she says, "Jean is a nice person. So she happens to like girls instead of guys. Yes. Some people like cats instead of dogs. Frankly, I'd rather live with a lesbian than a cat. Unless the lesbian sheds. I don't know."
That's so that's actually one of my favorite Sophia quotes, too. Yeah.
Well, my wife will be very happy we brought that in.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. It's a great... And it's funny. I convert so many people to being fans. That's my little secret mission in life. Is converting people into Golden Girls fans. And I got my dad hooked on them. I got my fiance hooked on them. And just recently, one of my buddies, he's like, somehow he didn't know I was a Golden Girls fan. And he turned to me, he's like, "Have you ever watched the Golden Girls?" And I'm like, "Is this a joke? Are we joking right now?" And he's just like, "I just watched that show." And he's like, "It's amazing." He's like, "I got hooked on it." He's like, "It's so good." I'm like, "I know." So
it is really, you got to see it sometimes, Phil.
I grew up watching it.
So did I.
Yes.
I know, right around that same time.
And
it was very funny.
You appreciate it so much as an adult just because of they just. I mean, it was just magic what they had on that show. All the right people in all the right departments. It was just.
I should watch it as an adult because I used to watch it as a kid. So maybe I should watch it and see it through a different set of eyes.
It's on Hulu.
Especially Phil, you're a writer.
Yes.
You write and you're a filmmaker. Yeah, you'll appreciate even just the writing on it is just like perfect. So
it's really smart stuff.
Yeah.
It's really high. It's just. I mean, they took 4 old ladies and they can have them do or say anything. because they can get away with it.
Right.
You know, so they hit AIDS, they hit homelessness, they hit homosexuality, transsexuality. I mean, just
wow.
Yeah, they really.
That's edgy for 1980s.
It really was.
1980s with 4 women senior citizens talking about sex. You know, and and it was unheard of at the time, but it really opened the door.
Betty White's still around talking about sex.
She is
30 years later.
She's amazing. I met her a couple years ago, and she was.
Wow!
I cried. First off, I cried the whole time, and but I made her laugh, and that made me cry even more. And then she was amazing, and she was an incredible person to meet.
Well, I've heard great things about her. Yeah.
But this has been great. Episode 63. I want to do the paranormal talent lockdown on Katrina Weidman. 78 hours she's with us to see if we have talent. No, it's episode 63, The Haunting of Katrina Weidman on What Are You Afraid of Horror and Paranormal Show. It's been a great episode, and we're going crazy right now getting our October content together. Tomorrow we have an interview with Lloyd Kaufman.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Trauma Entertainment. Yeah. He did Toxic Avenger and stuff. We're talking to him tomorrow.
And he was in one of my films.
He was in one of your films. Yeah, he came down. I watched it.
Did you watch it? Yeah. He was great.
He was like this little salesman.
He ad-libbed some of the stuff that I wrote, but he was great. I loved his ad-lib.
Plucky little guy. That was in. So we'll be talking.
He played the exterminator.
We'll be talking to him tomorrow.
We shot that in my kitchen. That was in
that was your kitchen.
We brought him to my kitchen.
I've seen your kitchen. Wow.
Yeah, it was in my kitchen.
Next time you do something like that, I really have to be there.
Yeah. It was great. We picked him up from the train station, and he came down from New York. So
well, that's fantastic.
I'm excited to talk to him again.
Having fun, everyone, Halloween? I mean, this is great.
Oh, my God.
I know.
My favorite time of year.
You do anything fun around this time, Katrina, besides hunt ghosts?
Yeah, that's pretty, because, I mean, I live in Halloween all year round, I think. You know what I mean? So, but I try to, if I had some time off, because normally I'm working from pretty much straight from like end of July through early November. If I had time, I always try to do, the pumpkin picking and the Renaissance Fair and hay rides and all that stuff. And I always tell my fiance, I'm like, you're booked like every weekend until like
so I tell mine too.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah. I'm like, we're doing Halloween stuff.
My wife is in grad school, and I've got like 3 windows I can fit in there, and it'll be Penhurst, and then I want to take her down to Historic Fallsington Day and go up to Newtown to the haunted house there that's really good, and
Which one's house is that?
It's like Midnight Productions up in Newtown, PA.
I'm very familiar with Newtown. I'm just trying to remember which...
Yeah, it started out as a small haunted house, and then it expanded into this large... It's a farm up there, and it's very different from Penhurst. It's very cool. Let's see if we get up there. Katrina, from Phil and me, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. No, I really appreciate it. I was happy we were able to do this, especially because you guys are local, and definitely I'm always trying to connect with
certainly have tonight.
Yeah, fellow people in our field. It's very nice to meet you guys.
You too. It was great.
This has been Fox.
This is Phil.
Would you like some candy, little boy? Back there.
Keith Fox Dunham lives in Philadelphia with his wife Allison. He's a lymphoma survivor, cancer patient, modern bard and historian. His first book, The Street Martyr, was published by Gutter Book. A major motion picture based on the book is being produced by Throughline Films. Destroying the Tangible Illusion of Reality or Searching for Andy Kaufman, a book about what it's like to be dying of cancer, was recently released from Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing, and Fox has a story in the Stargate anthology, Points of Origin, from MGM and Fandemonium Books. Mercy was recently released by Bloodbound Books. Fox is an active member of the Harvard Association. He's been published in hundreds of short stories and articles, and his motto is Wrecking Civilization, one story at a time.
Phil Thomas resides in the suburbs of Philadelphia and is an author and filmmaker. His screenplays have been produced into feature films such as False Face and Always from Darkness that are available in major retailers such as Best Buy and Target, as well as availability on Netflix and Amazon On Demand.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.